Next item, we're going to have Rick Hiles from the HBPA come and talk about the Thoroughbred Development Fund for Kentucky racing. So we're going to send somebody down, make sure we got the PowerPoint working correctly.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Rick Hiles. I've been the president of the Kentucky Horsemen's Benevolent Protection Association since 1994. Also a director and advisor to the Kentucky Thoroughbred.
Can we make sure your microphone is on? Is the green light?
There you go.
There we go.
Now we got it. Okay, did everybody hear me?
Yes.
First? Okay. I've also been a director on the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund Board, advisory board, that we do things. We're here this morning to speak to you about changing a statute to allow us to change the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund payments. The Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund was started in 1978. The reasoning it was started at the time, different states, New York, Florida, California, were offering bigger purse money than we could do in Kentucky at the time, and we were losing a lot of our horses to these allowance races and non-claiming races in other states to run for bigger purses. So the thought process behind that was that if we developed this fund to incentivize Kentucky breds to stay at home in Kentucky and race more, not only did it help the owner, but it also decreased its costs because going to the other places were more expensive to be there. At the time, the funding was minimal. We couldn't afford to put it on all the races for Kentucky breds, so they decided that the best thing to do was to put it into your non-claiming events, which would be maidens, allowances, and stake events, to the better, higher class horses. Unfortunately, claiming horses make up about 50% of the races, and they're only running for about 17% of the money. So it costs about the same amount to take care of these claiming horses as it does the better class of horses. Well, now we fast forward to the introduction of historical horse racing machines, and thanks to this legislative body, the benefits from that has created a lot more funding for the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund, and we've been able to supplement purses. Probably 5 years ago, they were using what they called optional claiming races. It got to the point they couldn't fill the allowance races, so they allowed a horse that had run through its conditions to run for a claiming price in those races at $25,000 or above. The problem was, when they first started this, you had horses running for conditions, running for the full purse, and the horse that was running for the claiming price running for a lot less purse. So we decided that's not fair. All the horses in the same race should be running for the same purse. So they made the $25,000 claimers or $50,000 claimers, whatever they may be, that were running in those non-claiming races eligible for the KTDF fund too. But it also alienated the lower class of horses. So what we want to do is we've got quite a bit of money now that's in this fund, and so we feel that we can open this fund up to give to to claiming horses, not only the non-claiming horses, and without interfering with the purses on the upper level horses. We've got 4 facilities on board right now of the historical racing machines, and we've got 4 more that's going to be opening pretty soon. So the money generated is going to be quite a bit, and we would like to move that down. Now, the benefits of this, it's going to help the owners, number one, because they're going to run for more purse money. It may entice an average guy that wants to get into horse racing business, such as Representative Gentry or somebody that more money that he can make with just a regular everyday claiming horse. Everybody can't afford, to spend $50,000 or $100,000, $200,000 on a horse, but they may be able to afford to spend $5,000 to $10,000 and get in a claiming race. And by putting this extra money to these claiming races, it allows an owner to recoup his investment. It allows him to enjoy the game, and it may even create more claiming going on, of which the general fund and the state benefits from that, because every time a horse gets claimed, this general fund gets a 6% sales tax on the value of that horse every time he's claimed. And just to put that in perspective for you, this year there's been 923 horses claimed for $22,400,000. So that has created just a little over $1.3 million for the general fund in revenues. It also is going to help the breeders because when they put their horses in the sale and the progeny of the broodmare, the earnings per foal is maybe go up some, and so that maybe entice someone else to buy the horse more and pay more for the horse, because you look at how much the foals have earned out of a broodmare, and the more they earn, the more you're enticed to say, well, she's a pretty good producer. Let's take a chance on that. So anyway, we feel like that this is the right thing to do. It's going to help. We feel like the state. It's going to help the breeder. It's going to help the owner, and ultimately help the trainers too because of their commission. Of course, all of this would have to go before the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund Advisory Board to set the rates and how much each race would get. You know, we wouldn't want to overload claiming races to the point that it became noticeably bad. You know, but so we're here to ask you to consider this and to let us put money into non-claiming, to the claiming races now. So if you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
We do. Representative Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Hiles, for being here. I agree with everything you've said, especially the part about it costs just as much to keep a $5,000 claimer as it does an allowance horse. That's
Sure.
Absolutely true. And you know, find so many of those people in those positions that own those horses were running for a purse that they can win that month, and it doesn't even cover the month training vet bills and stuff that they'll have. So we can definitely look at that, but I think there is a line that we have to be aware of and watch, as you well know, where we don't create an opportunity. There has to be a quality control in there to make sure we're not maybe somebody out there that would play to enter a horse that maybe shouldn't be running that day because the purse is so extremely high that they want to throw it in there. So I think with that, we have to be very aware of stick with our quality over quantity, and still taking care of the people because those are the backbone of the industry. You go to Turfway Park this winter, those are the people. That's what's keeping this industry running right here. So we need to help them. We need to increase those purses and make it work. But at the same time, let's not get crazy like some other states have done and create a dangerous platform that's out there. So
and I agree
all
with
your
you.
work on that. I
agree with you. I think that our smaller tracks like Ellis Park and Turfway Park would benefit more from this than Churchill Downs or Keeneland would, because their purses are so much lower and people are trying to, having a hard time up there. Sometimes if they're running for a $7,000 or $8,000 purse and they're shipping in or the training expense or vet bills. But I agree with you. We don't want to make them look unordinary to the public, or somebody looks at this and say, what are these guys doing, And so that's why this would have to go before the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund Advisory Board to keep the levels that we would put on the smaller claiming races intact where it would be.
Yes, sir, and I agree with you. It's such a rewarding game. It's such a fun sport to get into, and just opening that up.
Yes.
I think,
Right.
give them a chance to make it a financial
Yeah.
option.
We don't want to overload. We don't want to overload them.
Yes,
We don't
sir.
want to overload them. Just maybe a little supplement that, if you had 1,000 or 2,000 here and the guy's able to win it, he gets an extra 600, 1,200 a month. That
Makes
really
a
helps
big
an owner, and it may entice someone to say, this is a fun game, and the more people you get to participate in this, the more you're going to get back to the track, and we'll get to what Mr. Cummings was talking about. The ADWs have just taken over this industry to where we need the people to come back to the racetracks now, like they used to be.
Yes, sir. I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Okay.
Co-Chair Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick, Marty, good to see you. Full disclosure, I've known these two gentlemen for as long as I've been in Kentucky, and that's 29 years this month. And it's good to see you both. Rick, I'm really happy to see you're on the road to healthy recovery. Really good to see you. You look and sound well, and that makes me very happy.
Been through a lot this year.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're here. I agree with everything these gentlemen presented today. Now, this is not a new idea, but it's an idea whose time has come. I tried to get it passed in 2009, but it got caught up then in the debate over HHR, which has now been settled with Senate Bill 120, 11 years later, 12 years later. But I think it's an idea whose time has come because we've got the money to do it. And, I participate in some racehorse partnerships, and it is a lot of fun, but it is extremely difficult to make money, even to break even. And I've been a part of 2 stakes winners and 2 stakes placed horses and have yet to show any sort of profit. Still hopeful that, we hit that one big horse and we're able to do that. But that's what we all pursue in these partnerships. But not every horse becomes a stakes horse. Not every horse becomes an allowance horse. And like you said, the numbers was it 50% of the races are claiming races. And that's the bread and butter, the backbone of the sport. And I think it's time that we change the statute and allow those some of those KTDF monies to be used for Kentucky breds that run in claiming races. I do agree with Representative Cook. We need to be careful not to overload them and have a situation like they had in New York, where the purses were so big on claiming races that it created an incentive to keep horses in racing that should have been retired. And we want to avoid that. I mean, let's make sure that the purses are commensurate with the horse's value. But I do think it's a great idea. It's been suggested that we statutorily set a floor for the level of claiming race that it would be allowed on. But I would rather we change the statute and keep it more broad, and then for all claiming races, and then let the KTDF advisory board make recommendations and actually set the rules through the racing commission. Am I correct?
I think you're absolutely correct. This is because yourself, the races at Ellis Park and Turfway may need just a little more supplement than the ones at Churchill or Keeneland. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I mean, during the winter, for example, Turfway Park is competing with Mahoning Valley in near Youngstown, Akron, Ohio area for those kind of horses, and it's not a very far drive, about 3-hour van ride up to Mahoning Valley to run your horse. So that's a competitive situation. During the summer, Ellis Park is competing with Indiana. And maybe Fairmont Park in Illinois, if it's now called FanDuel Race Park.
Right.
If things take off there like it could, that'll be putting some downward competitive pressure. So do you think the best thing for us is to simply change the statute to allow KTDF money to be used for Kentucky breds running in claiming and starter allowance races, and then leave the details up to the KTDF advisory board with final sign-off by the Racing Commission?
I think that's absolutely correct. And you didn't mention Colonial Downs. We lost a lot of horses this summer to Colonial Downs. What it is, the claimers are leaving the state during the periods of Ellis Park and Turfway because the purses are so much bigger, and we want to keep them here. And keep in mind, this only will apply to Kentucky-bred horses that are being bred in Kentucky, and it won't apply to other states' breed.
And to be sure, claiming races run at Keeneland and Churchill are an important part of the daily race program there.
Exactly.
But what we need to remember is, to your point about Kentucky breds, the reason this program, and it's one of a kind in the country, we're the only state where we don't have races restricted just to state breds.
Right.
Every other state, they have races restricted just to state breds.
Right.
We say all comers come in the race, and we supplement the purses for an existing race. So a maiden at Turfways, if it's Kentucky bred, it's running for $60,000. If it's Pennsylvania bred, they run for $30,000.
Right.
It creates when it was set up by Nick Nicholson and Don Ball and folks like that back in the day. It was set up to create an incentive for people to buy Kentucky breds at our sales from people like Representative Cook and the thousands of other people who do what he does, and then race them in Kentucky.
Exactly.
So I think it's probably better to have a panel of people who are keeping up with this every day to make that judgment call, rather than have the General Assembly set that level.
And to give you an example, myself, when I go to the sales or even looking at claiming a horse, if he's not a Kentucky bred, I just forget about him anymore. And I know a lot of owners are doing that too. They say, well, we're going to race in Kentucky. We want the Kentucky breds to be eligible for the money. By putting this down into the claiming races, it even enhances them more to look at that area. It
creates more demand for our product, and then gives people an incentive to race them in Kentucky.
Exactly.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys for being here and addressing this issue. I'm really glad to hear this, and like he often does, Senator Thayer stole my thunder a little bit, but I just want to say, first of all, anything that makes the sport stronger and more accessible, I'm for. I agree with Senator Thayer. I don't think it should be us that is setting the amounts that get put into the claiming starter allowance races. The experts should be doing that, which is you guys. However, we need to give you the right to be able to do that because, you know, the claiming races is the heart and soul of horse racing on a daily basis at the track. You know, we have our big days where we go out there and we see the top horses come in from wherever to run the big stakes races. But if you're out there on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you guys know the heart of the business, the every day of the business is the claiming ranks, and your percentages bear that out. And what I have seen with a lot of my friends that follow horse racing that are not wealthy owners is they're getting involved in ownership in these little syndicates, and it's a lot of fun. And in many cases, they don't really make anything, but it's a nice way to get to the track and learn and get closer to the sport, meet the trainers, meet the jockeys, and it's a great thing. And that's how you get people involved that otherwise can't afford to get involved in the sport. So I think this will help that, and I would be very supportive of this piece of legislation. And there was one other thought I had too, and I've kind of lost it. Oh, let me just say this. I became a big fan of horse racing when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I remember this like it was yesterday. This is when I became a horse racing fan. This is when I began a fan of gambling too, which may not be a good thing, but I won the pot at the end of the street in the neighborhood when Cannonade won the 100th running of the Derby. And I was on cloud nine. And I think it cost me a dime to put in and pull that little name out of the hat, that all the neighborhood kids were involved with. And I think I won $2 out of it. And do you have any idea how much candy $2 bought in 1973 or 4 or whatever it was? And let's just say I came home that day and I learned a lot of life lessons. First of all, my mother taught me how to manage money better than going to the store and spending my whole $2 on candy. But what she didn't know is I learned a big lesson about networking, how many friends I acquired that day when I came 3 bags of candy home at 8 or 9 years old. And I think that's where I got my name. Little Al, the littlest kid in the neighborhood, became Big Al that day. Yeah. But anyway, the point of what I wanted to say is whatever we can do to get more people involved with the sport that otherwise may not be able to afford to get involved in ways that they can actually get involved with. And I think this is a good thing, and that's all I need to say. I've talked way too long. Thank you.
I will tell you one thing. For the people that want to get involved, and I don't care if it's a $5,000 claimer or a allowance race, the adrenaline rush and the thrill that they get when that horse is coming to the finish line first, you can't explain it. It overwhelms you. And so we used to have 8, 10, 12 horses in every claiming race. Now we reduced it down. We're getting 6 and 7, and we're trying to do something to pump that back up, to bring people back here to get more horses in those races. And that generates more tax revenues and everything for the state too. So it's just a win-win for everybody.
Senator McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to shift gears, guys, for just a quick second here, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm a finance guy talking about horses, not a horse guy talking about finances. So my questions might be super basic and even misphrased. Is there some, inside of the standardbreds, is there some kind of a purse change for Kentucky sires or anything in coming up in the next year? I've had this question posed to me, and I don't even know. I don't have a good frame of reference, even, to be frank. Is there some kind of a change in the standardbred purses coming up?
I'm not familiar with standardbreds.
Okay, so you just deal on the thoroughbreds. I thought you guys dealt both sides. Okay, never mind.
I believe Senator Thayer can answer that, or at least he believes it.
I think I can answer that. The Kentucky Sire Stakes is funded through the Kentucky Breeders Incentive Fund, which is funded by the sales tax on stud fees. and they are, I believe, it's at the Red Mile every September, and I believe they're thinking of expanding it either at the Red Mile or one of the new tracks in Oak Grove or Corbin. But if we can talk offline, I can probably put you in touch with someone who has more details on that.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Anything further? Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, and thank
We
you guys
appreciate
for
it.
listening to us.
Absolutely.